Is Putin engaging in a dangerous level of nuclear escalation over some nonsense? Is he trying to spin more propaganda to the Russian people and to NATO in the West? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's March 26th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get right into it. Okay, first let's take a look at the map. And biggest change is, again, no change, right? And this is a real slowing of the pace. You can see there's a small assessment that Russian forces have crossed this kind of river here, which is probably a little problematic for Ukrainian forces, simply because this is a natural obstacle. And you can see there's actually a small river here that would be a good defensive line, at least for this portion of the front. But overall, they're reporting very few major changes, and I think this is indicative of the fact that Russian forces are running out of steam, at least in Bakhmut. There's some evidence, of course, that they are focusing primarily on Bakhmut and Avdiivka, and that their big spring, this is their big spring offensive wrapping up. That seems to be the position of the UK Ministry of Defense, that they are even using their, and I appreciate this. This is a YouTube friendly way, one-way attack drones instead of aside and kamikaze, right? So one-way attack drones, and that they're focusing them primarily on axes that aren't Bakhmut, and that some of that is a reflection of the Russian MOD's unwillingness to help Wagner, and also the realization that they're just simply running out of steam. When we look, you can see launching just 85 attacks in the last 24 hours, a real reduction in their attack volume. But you can see there's still a focus on Bakhmut. I think Russia believes that it's very close to capturing the city, and it believes that it's also close to capturing Avdiivka. And I think they are finally coming to the realization that these two cities, if successfully captured, will represent the culmination, the final push of their big offensive, which, again, when you zoom out, you realize that relative to the territory taken in other Ukrainian offensive efforts, it pales in comparison. This is a tremendous amount of effort that the Russian forces have expended here, and for gains that in the final equation don't really account for much. But what's interesting is a couple of things. First, we'll talk about the one of the more prominent issues is that Putin announced that Russia will deploy tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus by July 1st. And Putin blames the UK's decision to send munitions containing depleted uranium, that is, uranium significantly less radioactive than natural uranium, what triggered his decision. To be clear, there is a vast difference. There is no way for depleted uranium, because it has been depleted, to be reconstituted into a nuclear weapon. It's just not possible. That's why the U.S. had no problem using depleted uranium rounds in the First and Second Gulf War. There is some belief that depleted uranium rounds are harmful when people are exposed to them in the very long term. I guess they're also harmful if people are exposed to them very suddenly. But that's because they're military rounds, not because they're made of depleted uranium. But the idea that they are exceptionally harmful, so harmful that they need to be deterred by tactical nuclear weapons is nonsense. Total nonsense. And even Putin is couching his argument that the projectile core releases, quote, radiation dust, which is that's not a thing. You can have radioactive dust, perhaps, but you can't have radiation isn't dust, sort of inherently. It may sicken Ukrainian citizens and damage Ukraine's environment. if he is upset about what depleted uranium rounds are doing to Ukraine's environment, wait till he learns what every single field we've looked at has looked like. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, of course, you know that I look at the combat drone footage, the GoPro footage. I do that all on the website now, combatvetnews.com. Right, I got kicked off Patreon. They are tired of war content, I guess. So I've launched my own site, combatvetnews.com. It's got all my YouTube videos, of course, for free. And if you want to support the channel, there's a members-only section where the members get to check out not only all the archives of my Patreon content, we're getting them up day by day, but also all the GoPro footage, the drone footage, the POV footage of real combat. And it lets us get all sorts of insights into the reality of combat, reality of this war. And we've seen so many... so much footage of these fields in Ukraine where they're just obliterated by artillery strikes, where Russian artillery has just completely crushed them. And the damage to the agricultural capacity of eastern Ukraine, it's like hard to understate. It's going to be decades before these fields are cleared entirely of Russian munitions and are back to being able to be safely planted. So you have this. So the idea that Putin's out here and suddenly is going to use tactical nukes to defend the Ukrainian environment is like comical, but classic. And of course, Institute for the Study of War says that this is just saber rattling by Putin. It's fairly clear, and I hope it's clear to everyone else who claims that, oh, NATO's escalating this war. It's like, no, NATO is not escalating this war. Putin is coming up with just increasingly preposterous excuses to lead the way in escalation, or to lead the way in symbolic saber rattling. Right? You know, at the end of the day, nuclear weapons in Belarus, I mean, we can look at the map. It doesn't actually increase the threat on anybody, right? Here's Belarus bordering Ukraine, bordering Poland, but then here's Russia, which is also bordering Ukraine. And Russia has tactical nukes in their country all the time. They're a nuclear power. So it's worth noting that this is not like a dangerous escalation. This is just saber rattling. It's empty rhetoric. And it's mostly, if there's any fears at all, it's the fear that, Russia and Belarus are becoming more and more militarily meshed and increasing just slightly the likelihood that Belarus will actually intervene with their military. But here's where things get even weirder. The Kremlin spin doctors aren't just spinning nonsense to the West, they're also spinning it to their own people. And they've started an advertising campaign to try to get people to enlist because the mobilization was so unpopular at home. And now people have realized just how miserable it is to serve in the Russian military that they really can't do another more general call-up. So instead, they're promising cash bonuses, enticing benefits. Recruiters making cold calls to eligible men. Enlistment offices working with universities and social services to lure students and the unemployed. What's interesting is that there's almost certainly some level of coercion, but the word seems to be out that being a contract soldier is terrible. Let's see if we can find here, right? There's a lot of pressure on Russia to generate more warm bodies for their war machine. But they really don't. But it was such a bad look to coerce or quasi-force or use deception to get people to sign up. That was such a bad look in the Russian media that now the boundaries are much clearer. The problem is, without coercion, you're not really going to get that many people who come in. And of course, everyone understands that people who sign up and who sign a contract, right, they are unlikely to be able to leave. Contract soldiers who want to terminate their contract can't. It's not legally possible until Putin ends the partial mobilization with a new decree. The only way out of the war is criminal prosecution. And even in those cases where they're prosecuted, they get a suspended sentence and are sent back to the front lines. And people have figured this out. It's no secret that you don't want, once you're in, you are going to stay in until you have become a casualty. And so in the wake of this, a lot of these guys are getting cold called, their military registration cards, right? They're trying to get deferments from their employers. And there's a lot of fear. There's also a lot of ads being displayed. They're being offered a one-time bonus of almost $4,000, a monthly salary of $2,500, and $100 a day for involvement in active offensive operations, and $650 for each kilometer of advancement if you're in an assault team. Yikes. Right? You soldiers also get tax and loan repayment breaks, preferential university admission status for their children, generous compensation for your family if you're wounded or KIA, and the status of war veteran, which carries even more perks. Oh boy. Too bad you probably won't be around to receive any of those perks. The irony is, of course, that a lot of these, the decent pay, we certainly never got $650 for active payout per patrol. That would be sick. We would have, if that were the case, it would be funny. We would have spammed so many more patrols if they're like, hey, when you're deployed, Paul, we'll pay you all this flat rate plus your daily hostile fire pay, which you do get. Well, I guess there's that, right? So because we did get a combat zone pay, and then there was also a hostile fire pay, which is like within the combat zone, if you are in danger of actually taking hostile fire, you're given an additional payout. So I guess we sort of did have that. So I can't really dunk on them too much. And I also get preferential mortgages. I don't have university admission status for kids, but I could transfer my kids my GI Bill. And right, you do get a pretty big life insurance payout if you get smoked. So I guess this is all things that the U.S. military promises you. The difference is, U.S. military deployments are 12 months. When your contract is up, your contract is up. Plus, Russia seems to be losing per day, or per week, I'd say, around what the U.S. military lost in terms of casualties per decade in the Iraq and Afghan wars. So not exactly apples to apples here. And most of these Russian citizens in every interview have said that they are simply not to be persuaded. They understand the casualty rates. They understand the realities of signing up for this conflict, and they understand just how bad it is. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Be sure to check out combatvetnews.com. It really helps me do what I do and support this channel. Obviously, I'm traveling, but we'll be back in action tomorrow, and we're going to get the shout out up for all the members of the channel. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one.